Hello. I would prefer talking about cooling, but I think your topic is mobility. But in my department, we have all these topics of energy planning combined. That's why I also want to give you a short overview about my department, because then you can also know what kind of support of data or informations you can get from me or from my department. We are the youngest department in Vienna. We are about 13 people. We have been founded from the last government. It was for sure that the city of Vienna needs also an energy planning department, and which deals with operative and strategic topics about energy planning. We are not a technical department. We are also not an old traditional administration department. We see ourselves as a service department for the city and for the stakeholders. We do a lot of creation of guidances and legal guidances, but we also help our stakeholders and partners fulfilling these guidances and these legal surroundings. We also give out subsidies for photovoltaics, solarthermy, and now also for storages. We are collecting, building up, and distributing a lot of knowledge and information and contacts. We are a very good established hub in Vienna now for energy topics. That's why we also involved in a lot of research topics, where we provide partners with data, information, but we also work active in a lot of research programs. This all is covered by our two main objectives. It's the first and most important one is the increasing of the energy efficiency. It's the most important way of reaching a new energy system to bring down the energy demand. And the second pillar is the optimization of renewable energy sources to change the energy system. This is all covered by public relation. We have a very strong public relation to bring up these new topics in the city and to our stakeholders. And my little baby is now the smart energy planning. I'm building up a new department in my sub-department in my department, which is dealing with integrated urban and energy planning. We try to plan the planning, as Hardfire before mentioned. It's a lot of governance topics and process coordination of three different topics. It's traffic planning, it's energy planning, and it's urban planning. And we try to bring these three worlds together, which is quite complicated. As Mr. Knoflacher pointed out before, there are a lot of, in the energy planning sector, there are a lot of engineers which have just numbers in their heads and they can optimize very good, but they don't understand complex systems. And on the other hand, there are city planners, they don't understand numbers, they're just thinking on processes and they won't never come to an end. It's all in the flow, and so we have to bring these worlds together. It's quite complicated. It's a kind of translation work I'm dealing with. As you see, we deal a lot with numbers because this smart energy planning should also be evidence-based, which is also quite new in the urban planning design. Here you see the energy flow chart of Vienna, which should bring you the numbers we are dealing with. On the right side, there are the fuels, which are important for the transport system. It's about, at the final energy consumption, we have 1/3 for households, for heating the households and lighting and all the stuff. We have about 20% it's for services, it's production and office buildings. And 36% of the energy final consumption is used for transport. As you can also see, when Vienna is a very efficient city. We have CHP plants which are converting the natural gas to electricity, and the waste heat is used for heating up in a district heating system the city. So we have a very high efficiency. We're talking about every Viennese person needs about 3,000 watt per head. Compared to Austria, in Austria it's about 6,000 watts per head, and Americans need about 12 to 15,000 watts per head. So I think we are quite on a very good level. But this good level is mainly forced through fossil fuels. It's the fuels for the transport, and it's the natural gas for electricity and also for heating. I will bring it then also up. Maybe first, I will show you the model split of the city of the trips. You have seen it before, but it's very interesting. We have the public transport, the cycling and the walking. It's about and the cars. It's about 27% of the cars. They need almost 90% of the energy needed in the transport system, and it's almost it's 90% of the fossil fuels. Just in the very top, there is the electricity which is needed for the public transport. And when you compare it with the model split, you see how much transport trips are done by the public transport and how less energy they are needed. So it's for sure what the next steps have to be done. You've seen it also quite a few times, the smart city goals. They are in some ways very qualitative goals, but we brought in some numbers, and they are resoluted by the city governance of Vienna. And I'm not sure if they really understood what they resoluted, because it's very ambitious, extremely ambitious to bring down the CO2 emissions up to 80%, and up to 1 ton of CO2 emissions per capita. We are now about 3 tons. So there's the biggest change. We have a very efficient system, so it's quite more hard to reach these goals. One solution will be bringing up the renewables up to 50%, but into the city borders it's very hard to bring up that amount of renewables. It's easy for the household sector, for the heating, because from the ground we get a lot of heat, and from the sun we get a lot of heat. But for renewables for cars or for mobility is very hard to get up in the city borders. So we see the smart city goals also focused on mobility. As Harald Frey also showed before, the numbers should be 15% of cars, and from the model split up to 2030. Which I think it's realistic. I think Vienna is on a good way, and so it's quite the half of the cars amount of today. And then it's also realistic to bring up 100% of alternative fuels of this 15% of model split for cars. I think it should be also thinking in normal classic cars in today, very heavy big cars won't be the solution. In the city should be small and light electricity cars. With wind energy from outside of Vienna and a lot of photovoltaics, it will be able to bring up this amount of electricity in the city borders, or for the city we can provide. All these numbers are detailed in our energy study. Here is the link. I think it's also sent it out before. You can read it in further detail. There's a lot of numbers, so I think it's better for you when you get into in detail, and when you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. It's also in English, not all the graphics, all the charts, but you have an English part where everything is translated, so maybe I think it should be easy for you to bring all the numbers. So I will hurry up. Thank you for your attention, and feel free for questions.
Thank you very much. Is there any immediate question? No?
Was everything? Sure.
Yeah, so no questions so far for for the energy perspective. Do you know anything about the how can the mobility system and the energy system? Can you say something about it? How they can be even more integrated in terms of smart grids and energy buffers? I mean, is that something what you would recommend us to do, to think about for the city of Vienna?
Yes, there are not really really good technical solutions compared to the urban planning. We have a focus of about 150 years, so it's not very easy for us to look at every new technological development. Always bring up this. It's not fair, this example, but I think it's very good to know. In Vienna, we have a water pipeline from the mountains. It's 200 kilometers away, and it was built up 150 years before, and it's still working. And it's still working for a city of 2 million inhabitants. And so we always ask, what are the main technical solutions which are worth to think on, which will also work in 100 or 150 years. And so we are not quite sure which will be the solution. One thing is the biggest change will a lot of services, heating, transport will switch to electricity. So that the question will be, how can we provide enough electricity from renewables? And the question of storage will be a question of services. It's not always useful to storage electricity because it's expensive. Sometimes it's better to heat up water to store it because heat is easier for storage than electricity. And the city is like a big buffer itself. And the interdependencies between heat and electricity and electricity to mobility will be the interesting thing. But what's the solution? I'm not sure. Feel free.
Just a quick question. You mentioned the public transport is run off electricity now in city of Vienna. So no bus are running by.
The biggest amount of the public transport is driven by electricity. It's the underground and the tram system. Mm-hmm. And there's some buses driven also by electricity. And at this amount, it's just of fuels. In this amount is the fuels for the buses included, but it's really less. What's not included in this graph is the train system, which is also very powerful in Vienna, but it's also very low numbers for a big amount of transportation capacity. So the numbers for the buses, I think it's 1 or 2%, nothing more.